They started tearing down my fence at 7 in the morning. The diesel smell cut through the fog, and metal scraped against wood. In long, deliberate strokes. I stood at my office window, watching 3 men in high-visibility vests attack the cedar posts my grandfather planted in 1987. That fence marked the eastern boundary of 3.2 acres, land he bought when land out here still meant something. He taught me 2 things before he died. Paper doesn't lie, and people do. I was about to learn which one Rachel Vaughn believed in. The foreman didn't look up when I walked out. He was maybe 50, thick arms, the kind of guy who'd spent his life following orders without asking questions. His crew had already pulled out 20 feet of fencing, and the excavator sat idling behind them like a patient predator. I kept my voice level. "This is private property. You need to stop." He wiped his forehead and pointed at a clipboard hanging from the excavator's cage. "HOA work order. We're expanding the community green space per plan 2024A. He said it like he'd said it before, like it was supposed to mean something to me. "I'm not part of the HOA, I told him. "This land has never been part of the Pine Ridge community. You're demolishing my fence. Talk to the HOA office." He turned back to his crew and made a rolling gesture with his hand. The excavator lurched forward. That's when the white Lexus pulled up. Rachel Vaughn stepped out in a gray suit that probably cost more than the fence they were destroying. She carried a Chanel bag and wore the kind of smile people use when they've already decided they've won. "I'm Rachel Vaughn, chairwoman of the Pine Ridge HOA. We've notified all residents about the expansion project." "I didn't receive anything," I said. "And this is my land." Her smile didn't move. "According to our survey, this section falls within HOA jurisdiction. You've been encroaching on community property for years. We're simply correcting a long-standing error." She pulled out a photocopied map from her bag. The lines were blurry, hand-drawn in red marker. No official seal, no signatures. She pointed at a boundary that carved 40 feet into my property. "This is the legal line. We have documentation." I looked at the map for 3 seconds. Then I looked at her. "May I take a photo of that?" "Of course." She held it up like she was doing me a favor. I pulled out my phone and took 4 pictures. The timestamp read 7:42 a.m., March 12th, 2024. I photographed the crew, the torn fence, the excavator, and Rachel's face. She watched me the whole time, still smiling. "You'll see we're well within our rights. Mr. Holt, some people resist progress, but facts are facts." I didn't argue. I just nodded and walked back inside. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from something colder. Anger that needed a place to go. I went down to the basement and opened the safe my grandfather installed when he built this house. Inside was a brown envelope with his handwriting on the outside, land deed. Original survey, 1987. Updated title, 2018. Next to it was a photograph of him standing under the oak tree in our backyard. The one that's been here for 80 years. On the back, he'd written, "Our land, our legacy." I spread the papers across my desk. The warranty deed showed 3.2 acres transferred from James Holt to Gavin Holt in 2018, recorded with San Joaquin County, stamped, and notarized. The survey map from the same year had been prepared by a licensed surveyor, signed and sealed. I laid Rachel's photocopy next to it. The difference was immediate. Her map showed the boundary 40 feet east of the legal line. It swallowed the section where my grandfather planted his garden, where the old oak stood, where I'd spent my childhood learning what it meant to protect something. I took photos of everything. Then I folded the papers and put them back in the safe. Outside, the excavator was already grading the soil flat. They were moving fast. I opened the Notes app on my phone and typed Day 1, encroachment documented. Let them proceed. Then I added one more line, something my grandfather used to say. Never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. I looked out the window. The crew had torn through 50 feet of fence now. They were laughing about something. Probably how easy the job was going. Rachel stood near her Lexus, talking on her phone. She looked confident, comfortable, like someone who'd never been challenged before. I picked up the photograph of my grandfather again. He was smiling in the picture, one hand on the oak tree, the sun behind him. He'd bought this land after my father lost everything in the 2008 foreclosure. Our family fell apart that year because my dad didn't keep the paperwork, didn't fight back, didn't know how. My grandfather spent his savings buying this plot to give us something solid again. Before he died in 2017, he made me promise one thing: protect what's ours. Gavin, not with fists, with proof. I set the photo down and looked outside one more time. The excavator was gouging into soil my grandfather had turned by hand. Rachel was gone. The crew kept working. I didn't call the police. I didn't call a lawyer. Not yet. I just watched. And I waited. Because if there's one thing my grandfather taught me, it's that people who think they've already won make the biggest mistakes. And every mistake they make is evidence. The land would remember. So would I. 3 days later, I woke up to an email with the subject line, "Violation Notice, Unapproved Structures," and the sender was Donna Mills, HOA Secretary. The message was polite in the way legal threats always are. It said I'd violated Section 7.3 of the HOA covenants by constructing an unauthorized garden shed on HOA property. I had 10 days to remove it or face a fine of $150 per day. Legal action would follow if I didn't comply. I sat at my kitchen table and read it 3 times. The shed they were talking about was the one I built in 2019, the summer after my grandfather died. It sat 60 feet inside my property line, far from any boundary dispute. I'd pulled permits from the county, followed every code. It wasn't even visible from the HOA side. But facts didn't seem to matter much to Rachel Vaughn. I opened my files and pulled out the building permit, the inspection certificate, and the survey map that showed exactly where the shed sat. Then I scanned everything and attached it to a reply. I kept my tone neutral. Ms. Mills, the structure referenced is located on my private property, as shown in the attached county-recorded survey. I'm including my warranty deed and the 2018 boundary survey performed by a licensed surveyor. I'd appreciate if the HOA could provide its official survey documentation so we can resolve this discrepancy. I hit send and made myself coffee. They never replied. 4 days later, I got a notice for the next HOA board meeting. It was scheduled for Thursday evening at 7 p.m. in the Pine Ridge Community Center. The agenda listed budget approvals, landscaping updates, and finalizing Phase 1 of the Commercial Plaza project. My name wasn't on it. But I decided to go anyway. The community center smelled like coffee and old carpet. About 30 residents filled the folding chairs, most of them in their 50s and 60s. Rachel sat at the front table with 4 other board members. She wore a navy blazer this time, hair pulled back tight. When I walked in, she glanced at me but didn't react. I took a seat in the back row and opened the folder I'd brought. Inside were the original deed, the survey, the building permit, and printouts of every email I'd sent. Rachel ran the meeting like she was conducting an orchestra. Budget passed. Landscaping approved. Then she moved to the Plaza project. Phase 1 is progressing on schedule, she said. We've completed foundation work on 3 buildings. The contractor estimates we'll break ground on the remaining 9 structures by mid-May. This project represents a significant investment in our community's future. People nodded. Someone clapped. When she opened the floor for homeowner comments, I stood up. I have a question about the Plaza project. Rachel's expression didn't change, but something tightened around her eyes. Mr. Holt, you're not a member of this HOA. You're attending as a guest, not a voting resident. I understand, I said. But your construction crew demolished my fence and is building on my property. I've sent documentation to your office showing the legal boundary. I haven't received a response. We've reviewed your claims, Rachel said. Her voice was calm, almost bored. Our surveyor confirmed the boundaries in 2023. Your grandfather's paperwork is outdated. Property lines can shift due to erosion, usage patterns, and updated assessments. One of the board members, a man named Tom Brennan, leaned forward. "Rachel, shouldn't we review both surveys side by side if there's a legitimate dispute?" "I've already consulted our legal counsel," Rachel cut in. "The 2023 survey supersedes prior claims. This meeting is about HOA business, not individual disputes." She looked back at me. "If you'd like to pursue this further, you're welcome to contact our attorney." I walked down the aisle and set my folder on the table in front of her. "This is the recorded warranty deed and the county survey from 2018. It's public record. You're building 12 commercial structures entirely on my land." Rachel didn't open the folder. She didn't even look at it. "Thank you for your input, Mr. Holt. We'll take it under advisement." Then she moved to the next agenda item if I wasn't there. I left the folder on the table and walked out. In the parking lot, I stood by my truck and watched people filter out of the meeting. Most of them avoided eye contact, but one woman approached me slowly. It was Karen Ortiz, one of the board members I'd seen sitting next to Tom. She was in her 60s, with gray hair, kind eyes that looked tired. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Rachel runs things very tightly. She pushed that expansion project through without a full board vote. Some of us weren't comfortable, but she said it was time-sensitive." Karen glanced back at the building, then handed me a folded piece of paper. "Check the license." Something felt off. I unfolded it. It was a printout of an email from Summit Land Surveys, the company that supposedly prepared the HOA's 2023 boundary map. The signature line listed a name, Michael Voss, licensed surveyor. "Thank you," I said. Karen nodded and walked back to her car. I got into my truck and pulled out my phone. I searched the California Board of Professional Engineers and Land Surveyors. The website had a license lookup tool. I typed in Michael Voss and Summit Land Surveys. No record found. I sat there in the dark parking lot for a long time, the glow of my phone screen lighting my face. Outside, Rachel's Lexus pulled out of the lot, smooth and silent. She didn't see me watching. I opened my notes app and added a new line. "Day 5. Fraudulent survey suspected. Needs certified records." Then I started the engine and drove home. The oak tree was still standing when I got there. The construction site was quiet. But in the distance, I could see the steel frames of 3 buildings rising against the night sky. They were building fast, and I was letting them. I spent the next 3 days doing what my grandfather taught me. Research. Not the kind you do with anger, but the kind you do with patience. California law requires land surveys to be performed by licensed surveyors with seals, signatures, and recorded with the county recorder's office. None of it is optional. I called the San Joaquin County Recorder's office on a Tuesday morning. The woman who answered said her name was Linda. I asked if any boundary changes had been recorded for my property since 2018. She checked. "No, sir. Nothing. The last filing was your warranty deed." "What about a survey by Pine Ridge HOA in 2023? No record of that either." I ordered certified copies of my title and survey for $45. That afternoon, I drove to Stockton. Summit Land Surveys was listed in a strip mall off Pacific Avenue, wedged between a nail salon and a Vietnamese bakery. The office windows were papered over. A for-lease sign hung in the door. I tried the handle. Locked. The bakery smelled like warm bread and sugar. The woman behind the counter said the place closed last year. Man ran some kind of consulting business but never had customers. Moved out around October. His name was Voss, maybe. Paid rent on time, then disappeared. I photographed the shuttered office. A fly buzzed inside the taped window, trapped between light and paper. In my truck, I pulled up the California Secretary of State Registry. Summit Land Surveys, LLC, registered 2022. Owner Michael Voss, dissolved in September 2023. I cross-checked the licensing board. Michael Voss, no license, never had one. Rachel Vaughn had used a fake surveyor to create a fake map and justified 12 buildings on my land with it. Either she knew, or she had been reckless. Either way, the truth was undeniable. That night I contacted attorney Sarah Delgado. She specialized in property disputes and didn't lose often. I spread everything across her desk the next morning. She reviewed it in silence, making notes on a yellow pad. When she looked up, her expression was careful. "This is fraud and trespassing. You have an airtight case, but I recommend waiting. Let them invest deeper. Right now they have 3 foundations. If you stop them now, they will cut losses and settle quietly. Wait until demolition costs more than settlement, until the liability is undeniable." I thought about it. "How long?" "Until they cannot back out," she said. "Until stopping would bankrupt them." I looked out her window at a construction crew framing a building across the street. Hammers echoed off the pavement. "Is that legal?" I asked. "To watch them dig deeper." She didn't blink. "It's strategic. You are not obligated to save them from negligence. They could have checked public records. They chose not to. That's on them." Part of me wanted to stop it right then, but another part, the part that sounded like my grandfather, said wait, let them commit fully. Let the evidence pile until there was no way out. "Okay," I said. We wait. Sarah drafted a civil complaint, but we agreed not to file yet. She also requested an official county resurvey, $1,200. I paid that afternoon. The surveyor, William Chen, scheduled a site visit for Thursday. When I got home, I stood at my window. 4 buildings had full foundations now. Steel columns rose on 2 others. A banner stretched across the site. Pine Ridge Commercial Plaza, Phase 1. I opened my notes app. Day 12. The foundation was poured on 4 structures. Fraudulent survey confirmed. County resurvey scheduled. Let them continue. Then one more line. "Grandpa, I hope I'm doing this right." Outside the oak tree stood silent in the twilight. The land remembered everything. It was 2 a.m. when I gave up on sleep. I went to the basement and opened my laptop. Construction footage played back in grainy night vision. Workers welding steel, pouring concrete, and moving with the efficiency of people who believed they were doing legitimate work. They had no idea they were trespassing, just doing their jobs, going home to families. If I won, some would lose paychecks. The HOA would collapse. Homeowners innocent of Rachel's decisions would face special assessments. Good people would pay for one person's arrogance. I picked up my grandfather's photograph. He stood under the oak tree, 70 years old, smiling like he had finally figured something out. "Is there a version where nobody gets hurt?" I whispered. But I knew the answer. Someone always paid. The only question was who deserved to. My father lost our home in 2008 because he didn't keep records, didn't know his rights. Our family was scattered, broken by something a single piece of paper could have prevented. My grandfather bought this land to give us something permanent. If I let Rachel take it now, what did that make me? The words my grandfather said the week before he died came back clear. "Son, you cannot save everyone, but you can save the truth." I went back upstairs and lay down. Sleep came. Not peaceful, but certain. I wasn't doing this for revenge. I was doing it because it was right, even if it didn't feel good, even if people got hurt. The truth had to matter more than comfort. When I woke at dawn, I felt lighter. Not happy, but resolved. I made coffee and reviewed Sarah's draft complaint. Everything was in order. The evidence stacked. The trap set. Now I just had to wait for Rachel to walk into it. Maybe she believed she was building something good. Maybe that's how all damage starts. Sarah and I spent the next week building 3 separate cases. The first was a civil complaint for trespass, conversion, fraud, and a quiet title action. We itemized damages for property destruction, lost use of land, and emotional distress. We requested an injunction to halt construction, removal of all structures, and punitive damages. The second was a criminal referral to the San Joaquin County District Attorney regarding fraud under Penal Code Section 484, theft by pretense. The third was a formal complaint to County Code Enforcement for unpermitted construction. Rachel's project had no legitimate building permits because she had no legal right to the land. Each document was precise. factual, and devastating. Sarah also finalized arrangements with county surveyor William Chen. He was licensed for 18 years, a registered professional engineer and land surveyor. His fee was $1,200 for a full boundary survey with GPS equipment and a certified report filed with the county. We scheduled him for Thursday morning at 9 a.m. I paid in advance. Everything was moving into position like stones on a chessboard. Rachel didn't know the board had already tilted against her. Thursday came cold and clear. William arrived in a white county truck with 2 technicians and equipment that looked like it belonged on a spacecraft. They set up a total station and GPS receivers at various points around my property. Rachel must have been watching because she appeared within 20 minutes, walking fast across the construction site in a black pantsuit and heels that sank slightly into the dirt. "You cannot be here," she said to William. "This is HOA property." William didn't look up from his equipment. "Ma'am, I am a licensed surveyor commissioned by the county. I have legal right of access to establish property boundaries per California law. Please step aside." Rachel pulled out her phone and called someone. She put it on speaker. A man's voice answered. "This is Greg Paller, HOA legal counsel. What seems to be the problem?" William took the phone from Rachel's hand without asking. "Counselor, if you obstruct a licensed surveyor performing lawful duties, I will file a report with the county and the state bar. Your choice." There was a pause on the other end. "Proceed," Paller said. "We will address this through proper channels." William handed the phone back to Rachel. She stood there for a moment, face pale, then turned and walked back toward the HOA office. I watched from my porch. She didn't look back. William and his team worked for 4 hours. They measured 47 survey points, photographed over 200 images, and used iron pins buried in the ground since 1987 as reference markers. Those pins were the original boundary monuments my grandfather had installed when he bought the land. Someone had moved the fence line over the years, but never touched the iron pins. They were still there, rusted but intact, embedded in concrete 6 inches below the surface. William showed me on his tablet. The boundary line was 85 feet west of where the HOA was building. Every structure, all 12 buildings, sat entirely on my property. Not partially, not ambiguously, completely. "How long for the official report?" I asked. 5 business days, William said. "Certified, sealed, and recorded with the county. And if they continue construction, every nail they drive is additional trespass," he said. "Document everything." I shook his hand and thanked him. His expression stayed professional, but I saw something flicker in his eyes. Respect, maybe. Or pity for Rachel. I wasn't sure which. That evening I received an email from the HOA. The subject line read, "Final violation notice. Shed removal required by May 15th or legal action." Today was May 10th. Rachel was escalating, trying to pressure me into compliance before her world collapsed. I didn't reply. I forwarded the email to Sarah with a single line. "Let them send it." She responded immediately. "Perfect. Let them threaten you on record. It strengthens our case." I opened my notes app and added Day 18. Survey confirms 100% encroachment. Report due May 15th. Hold position. I closed the laptop and looked outside. The construction site was quiet now. Shadows stretched long across the steel frames. Somewhere in the distance a dog barked. The air smelled like dust and diesel. The night before the inspection results were finalized, I sat alone in my office. Sarah's draft complaint was open on my laptop. 63 pages. Exhibits labeled A through Q. Every photograph, every document, every recorded conversation. It was complete, airtight, undeniable. But I hadn't filed it yet. Tomorrow the county survey will be recorded. Tomorrow the truth would become public record. Tomorrow there would be no turning back. I opened my notes app and scrolled to the beginning. Day 1. Encroachment documented. Let them proceed. I read every entry, every observation, every photograph timestamp. 18 days of silence. 18 days of watching Rachel build her empire on stolen ground. watching her smile at community meetings, cut ribbons, give interviews about progress and leadership. She had no idea the foundation was sand. I picked up my grandfather's photograph again. He was younger in this one, maybe 50, standing beside the oak tree with a shovel in his hands. The back of the photo had a date written in pencil. April 1987, the day he planted the tree, the day he bought the land. I spoke to the image quietly. I kept my promise, Grandpa. I protected it. With paper, not fists, just like you taught me. For the first time in weeks, I felt the weight lift slightly. Not gone, but lighter. Tomorrow the truth would come out. Tomorrow Rachel would face what she had built. Tomorrow justice would arrive, not as revenge, but as a consequence. I thought about her standing in the dirt, heels sinking, phone shaking in her hand. She had looked scared, not angry. Scared. Maybe she knew already. Maybe some part of her had always known the survey was fake. The project was doomed. The risk was real. Or maybe she had believed so completely in her own authority that the possibility of being wrong never entered her mind. Either way, tomorrow would be the same. The truth does not care what you believe. It just is. I closed the laptop and looked out the window one last time. The moon was nearly full, casting silver light across the construction site. Steel beams glowed like bones. The oak tree stood dark and solid against the sky. I turned off the lights and went to bed. Tomorrow everything would change. But tonight, for just a few more hours, the world could pretend it was still the way Rachel thought it was. May 16th arrived bright and warm. Rachel Vaughn organized a groundbreaking celebration for Pine Ridge Commercial Plaza. The irony was not lost on me. They had already broken ground 2 months ago. This was a victory lap. The event started at 3 p.m. on the construction site, right in the middle of my property, surrounded by 12 buildings in various stages of completion. 4 had steel frames reaching 2 stories high. 8 were still foundation and concrete slabs. A white tent covered folding chairs arranged in rows. A banner stretched across the backdrop. Pine Ridge thrives. Phase 1 complete. I stood at my office window and watched them arrive. 60 or 70 residents in business casual and sundresses. A reporter from the Stockton Record with a camera. A city council member I recognized from local news. David Torres. He shook Rachel's hand and smiled for photos. Rachel wore a cream-colored suit and held a microphone like she had been born with one. She looked confident, radiant even. She had no idea what was coming. Sarah Delgado stood beside me, holding a thick manila envelope. The certified county survey had arrived that morning at 9 a.m. She had filed it with the county recorder an hour later. It was now public record. Official. Sealed. Undeniable. Should we serve her now? Sarah asked quietly. I checked my watch. 3:45 p.m. Let her finish, I said. Let them all celebrate. Tomorrow. Sarah nodded slowly. You are letting her have her moment so the fall is steeper. I shook my head. I am letting the truth have its moment. Hers is borrowed. Outside. Rachel stepped up to the microphone. Her voice carried across the open space, amplified by portable speakers. Today marks a new chapter for Pine Ridge. We are transforming unused land into a vibrant commercial hub. Coffee shops, fitness centers, professional offices. This is what strong community leadership looks like. The crowd applauded. Someone whistled. Rachel smiled and gestured toward the buildings behind her. This project represents months of planning, collaboration, and vision. We faced resistance, but facts are facts, and the facts are clear. This land serves our community now. The reporter raised his hand. There was some concern from a neighbor about the property lines. Rachel laughed lightly. Resolved. Some people resist progress, but our survey team confirmed everything. We are 100% within our rights. The clip would be online within an hour. I knew it would. I pulled out my phone and opened the community page someone had set up for Pine Ridge residents. The celebration was already being live-streamed. Comments scrolled past. So proud of Rachel. This HOA actually gets things done. That neighbor was always weird. Never joined events. Good riddance. Finally, someone stands up to entitled landowners. I took screenshots of every comment. Saved them in a folder labeled Evidence. Public statements. Sarah watched over my shoulder. They are burying themselves in public, she said. Good, I replied. When the truth comes out, everyone will remember what they said. Outside, Rachel cut a ribbon with gold-plated scissors. More applause. More photos. David Torres said a few words about economic development and community pride. The tent filled with the sound of champagne being poured. Laughter drifted through my open window. It felt distant, like watching a movie where you already know the ending. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text. She glanced at it and showed me the screen. It was from Karen Ortiz, the board member who had helped me weeks ago. I am sorry. I tried to slow her down. Please do not give up. I typed a reply. I have not. See you tomorrow at the meeting. I sent it and put my phone away. The celebration continued outside. Someone turned on the music. People started talking in small groups, holding plastic cups, laughing in the sunlight. Rachel stood at the center of it all, glowing. I turned away from the window and sat down at my desk. Tomorrow at 3 p.m., I had requested an emergency public inspection through the county. William Chen had agreed to attend. The news crew had been notified. It was all perfectly legal under the California Public Records Act. Tomorrow, in broad daylight, surrounded by witnesses, the truth would be demonstrated. Not argued, not debated, demonstrated. The county surveyor would pull the measurements. He would mark the boundaries. He would show everyone exactly where Rachel's empire ended and my land began. And there would be no more ambiguity, no more borrowed confidence. Just the line, clear as iron and just as permanent. May 17th, 3 p.m. I requested the inspection for mid-afternoon because I wanted sunlight. Truth should never hide in shadows. William Chen arrived in his county truck with 2 technicians and a full survey kit. GPS equipment, a total station, measuring tapes, orange safety cones, and rolls of bright neon cord. The kind used to mark boundaries at construction sites. The kind impossible to miss. I met them at the edge of my property. The real edge. 85 feet west of where Rachel thought it was. A crowd had already gathered. Word spreads fast in a small community, especially when the county shows up unannounced. Rachel appeared within minutes, walking quickly across the dirt in low heels and a navy blazer. Her face was tight. "What is this?" she said. Not a question. An accusation. I kept my voice calm. A legal property boundary demonstration. Mr. Chen is a licensed surveyor commissioned by San Joaquin County. He is here to establish the recorded property line. Rachel turned to William. You cannot do this without notice. William did not look up from his equipment. Ma'am, this is a public inspection requested under the California Government Code. I have full authority. Please step back. More people arrived. Tom Brennan and Karen Ortiz from the HOA board. I recognized you from the celebration yesterday. The reporter from the Stockton Record with his camera. Even David Torres, the city council member, showed up looking confused. William and his team worked methodically. They used GPS to locate the original iron pins buried in 1987. 6 pins total, marking the corners and midpoints of my property. The technicians dug carefully, brushing away dirt until the rusted metal showed. Then William placed orange survey stakes at each pin location. Tall, visible, official. The crowd murmured. I heard someone say, "Those are inside the construction zone." William's team began stringing the neon orange cord between the stakes. The line ran clean and straight. Cutting directly through buildings 3, 4, and 5, it passed within feet of the foundations on 6 and 7. It bisected the white celebration tent still standing from yesterday. The visual was undeniable. Every structure sat east of the line. Every structure sat on my side. A woman in the crowd gasped. Wait, that line goes through the buildings. William spoke without emotion, loud enough for everyone to hear. Correct. according to the recorded survey from 1987, updated in 2018. The legal boundary is here. All structures currently under construction are on private property belonging to Gavin Holt. Silence. Then chaos. Residents started talking at once. That cannot be right. How is that possible? What does this mean? Rachel stood frozen, staring at the orange line like it was a snake. Her hands shook. I stepped forward and pulled a folder from my bag. Your 2023 survey was prepared by Summit Land Surveys. The owner, Michael Voss, has no California surveyor license. He never did. The office closed in October 2023. Here is the business dissolution record. Here is the license search result, showing no record found. Here are photographs of the vacant office. I handed copies to William, to the reporter, and to Tom Brennan. The paper passed through the crowd like evidence at a trial. William held up the HOA's map, the one Rachel had shown me months ago. I have reviewed this document. It lacks a professional seal. It lacks a valid license number. It was never recorded with the county recorder. It has no legal standing under California law. The reporter raised his microphone toward Rachel. Ms. Vaughn, were you aware that the surveyor was not licensed? Rachel's voice cracked. I trusted him. He said he was certified. I did not check. Why did you not verify? The reporter pressed. Rachel looked around wildly, searching for support that was not coming. I wanted this project to succeed. I wanted our community to thrive. I thought I was building something good. Tom Brennan's voice cut through. How much have we spent on this? Rachel, the treasurer, Linda Mays, pulled out her phone and opened a spreadsheet. $487,000 so far. Phase 2 contracts are another $920,000. The crowd erupted. Are we liable? This is insane. Who approved this? Someone shouted. We are going to get sued. Someone else said, I am not paying for this. Rachel sank slowly onto a stack of lumber, her carefully composed exterior collapsing. She was not yelling. She was not defiant. She just looked small. Sarah Delgado stepped forward, crisp and professional. Mr. Holt filed a civil complaint this morning in San Joaquin County Superior Court. The case number is attached to these documents. Criminal referrals for fraud will be submitted to the district attorney tomorrow. You have 30 days to respond. She placed a thick stack of paper on the folding table near the tent. Summons and complaint. 47 pages. Rachel looked up at me, tears streaming. Why did you let us build this far? Why did you not stop us? I met her eyes. Because I needed you to commit. I needed the evidence to be undeniable. And I needed the community to see the truth for themselves. Karen Ortiz covered her mouth with her hand. Tom Brennan stared at the orange line stretching across 12 buildings. The reporter kept filming. David Torres walked quietly back to his car without a word. I turned and walked toward my house. Camera crews followed, calling questions I did not answer. I stopped at the oak tree and rested my hand on the bark. The wood was warm from the sun. Solid, real. This land has stood for 80 years, I said to no one in particular. It will stand after today. The system moved faster than I expected. May 18th, the day after the public inspection, a county building inspector named Mark Sullivan arrived at the construction site and posted red stop work orders on all 12 buildings. Violation: construction without permits on private land. By May 20th, the HOA held an emergency board vote. Rachel Vaughn was removed as chairwoman. The vote was 4-0. Rachel did not attend. May 22nd, the HOA's insurance company, State Farm, sent a letter denying liability coverage. The reason cited was fraudulent misrepresentation in the project application. Without insurance, the HOA was fully exposed. May 25th, the San Joaquin County District Attorney opened a formal investigation into fraud and conspiracy under Penal Code Section 182. May 28, my attorney, Sarah, filed a motion for preliminary injunction. The judge granted it the same day. The order was clear. The HOA must cease all activity on my land. No demolition, no transfer of assets, No interference until the case is concluded. June 3rd. I sat across from Rachel Vaughn in a small conference room at Sarah's office. This was her deposition. Rachel looked different. No makeup. Hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. A gray cardigan over a white shirt. She looked tired. Beaten. The court reporter sat to the side. Fingers ready on the stenography machine. Sarah opened a binder and began. Ms. Vaughn, when did you first learn that Summitland Surveys was not a licensed firm? Rachel's voice was barely above a whisper. I did not verify. Michael Voss contacted me in early 2023. He offered to do the survey for $2,000. Much cheaper than other firms. I thought it was a good deal. Did you ask for his license number? Sarah asked. No. Did you file the survey with the county recorder? No. He said it was not necessary for internal HOA use. Did you consult with an independent attorney before demolishing Mr. Holt's fence? Rachel hesitated. Greg Paller looked at the documents. He said we were fine. Did you show him the original deed Mr. Holt provided at the board meeting? The silence stretched. No, Rachel said finally. Why not? Sarah asked. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Because I wanted the project to happen. The plaza would have increased property values. It would have made me look like someone who gets things done. I wanted people to see me as more than just a widow who lost her husband. Sarah paused. Let the record show the witness is crying. Rachel wiped her face with a tissue. My husband died 3 years ago. Everyone looked at me like I was broken. I wanted to prove I could lead. That I was not just someone who lost everything. I wanted to matter. She took a shaky breath. I trusted the wrong person. I thought building something beautiful would make me whole again. Instead, I destroyed what was not mine, and I cannot take it back. The room was silent except for the soft clicking of the stenography machine. I felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction, not victory, just a hollow kind of sadness. Rachel had wanted to matter. She had wanted to build. And in trying to prove herself, she had stolen from someone who never asked to be part of her story. After the deposition, Sarah and I walked to the parking lot. She is done, Sarah said. The DA will likely offer a plea deal, misdemeanor fraud, restitution, probation. And the buildings, I asked. You have 3 options. Force demolition at HOA expense, negotiate a sale to the HOA at the full appraised value plus damages, or keep the structures and lease the land. How much is the appraised value? Preliminary estimate is $1.8 million for the structures, plus $340,000 in damages and legal fees. $2.1 million total. I looked toward the construction site visible in the distance. Steel frames against blue sky. I do not want their money, I said. Sarah stopped walking. Then what do you want? I met her eyes. Justice. Not revenge. Just the truth on record. And I want that land back the way it was. July 10th. The settlement conference took place at the county courthouse, in a room with fluorescent lights and gray carpet. The new HOA board sat on one side of the table with their new attorney. Tom Brennan led the discussion. Sarah and I sat across from them. The proposal was straightforward. The HOA would pay me $2.1 million. They would keep the 12 buildings, complete construction, and lease a portion of my land for 20 years at $5,000 per month. Rachel Vaughn would write a public apology letter posted on the HOA website and printed in the Stockton Record. She would also reimburse the HOA $50,000 from personal assets due to gross negligence. Tom slid the document across the table. This is fair, he said. More than fair. I read it twice. Then I pushed it back. No. Tom blinked. I do not understand. You are rejecting $2 million. I do not want money, I said. I want my land. But demolition will cost $600,000, Tom said. We do not have that. It will bankrupt the HOA. Homeowners will face special assessments of $8,000 per household. These are good people. Mr. Holt. People who had nothing to do with Rachel's decisions. I understand, I said. Then the board should have exercised oversight. The room went quiet. Sarah touched my arm gently. Gavin. Can we take a break? We stepped into the hallway. She closed the door behind us. What are you doing? She asked. You have them. You won. Take the settlement. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. My grandfather did not buy that land so I could sell it for profit. He bought it so our family would have something that could not be taken, if I let them keep those buildings. What was the point? Sarah studied my face. Then what do you propose I thought about it? A compromise. They demolish buildings 1 through 4, the ones closest to the oak tree. They restore that section of land. Topsoil. Native grass. Exactly as it was. County inspector verifies completion. The remaining 8 buildings. They can keep. I will lease that section for $4,000 per month. 15 years. Revenue goes into a land conservation fund. Not to me. To protect open space in this county. Sarah's expression softened. That is a compromise they might accept. It is not a compromise, I said. It is what is right. We went back inside. I presented the terms. Tom and the board huddled briefly. Then Tom extended his hand. Agreed. We shook. The settlement was finalized on July 25th. Demolition of buildings 1 through 4 was completed by August 15th. The land was restored over 3 weeks. New soil, native grasses, wildflowers. On September 1st, I stood in that space and felt the ground soft under my boots. The oak tree stood free again. No steel frames crowding its roots. No concrete choking the soil. The HOA had installed a new fence along the legal boundary with a brass plaque mounted on a stone post. Property line. Surveyed. 2024. Tom Brennan came to see me that afternoon. He carried a folder with the new HOA bylaws, mandatory title searches, independent legal review, transparency requirements, financial audits. We are not repeating this, he said. Good, I replied. He hesitated. Rachel asked me to give you this. He handed me an envelope. I opened it later, alone. The letter was handwritten, 2 pages, ink smudged in places where tears had fallen. She did not ask for forgiveness. She simply said she was sorry. Sorry for not listening. Sorry for not checking. Sorry for believing her authority meant she could not be wrong. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my desk drawer next to my grandfather's photograph. September faded into October. The 8 remaining buildings opened for business. A coffee shop, a yoga studio, small offices. They paid rent on time. The land conservation fund grew slowly. I tended the garden under the oak tree, the same spot my grandfather had planted 60 years ago. Sometimes I sat on the ground and pressed my palm to the soil. The land remembered. It always would, and so would I. Sometimes the hardest battles are not fought with fists, but with patience, paper, and the courage to let the truth unfold in its own time. If this story reminded you that justice is not about revenge, but about standing firm when the world tells you to back down, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever had to defend what was rightfully yours? Have you faced someone who thought power meant they could ignore the truth? Share your story. Let's build a community where quiet strength matters more than loud authority. And if you believe stories like this need to be told, subscribe to Gated Drama, because the land remembers, and so should we.